At my graduation, they clinked glasses for my brother's promotion and ignored me. So I posted a press release screenshot of the startup I just sold, and within 48 hours their calls went from sarcastic to begging for a meeting. I, 29M, stood at the edge of the backyard, watching everyone celebrate something that wasn't mine. My graduation cap sat on the patio table, untouched, while my brother held court near the grill with our parents orbiting around him like he'd just cured cancer. He'd gotten a promotion at his accounting firm, senior manager or something. The kind of title that sounds impressive at dinner parties, but means he'd be working 70-hour weeks reviewing spreadsheets for the next decade. Mom had her phone out, taking pictures of him holding a champagne flute. Dad clapped him on the shoulder repeatedly, that proud grip he reserved for moments he considered worthy. My diploma might as well have been invisible. I'd finished my computer science degree that morning, walked across the stage while they sat in the bleachers checking their watches, and now I was watching them toast to my brother's career milestone at what was supposed to be my celebration lunch. My aunt asked me how it felt to finally be done with school. I told her it felt fine, nothing special. She nodded and immediately turned back to ask my brother about his new salary range. The conversation flowed around me like I was a rock in a stream. My girlfriend squeezed my hand and suggested we leave early. I told her not yet. I've been working on something for 3 years. A startup. Nothing glamorous, just a logistics optimization platform that used machine learning to help small warehouses reduce waste and improve routing. I'd built it in my dorm room during my sophomore year, got 2 of my classmates involved, and we'd somehow attracted attention from a mid-sized venture capital firm by our junior year. We took their money, quit pretending to focus on our classes, and spent every waking hour refining the product. 2 months ago, a larger company approached us. They wanted to acquire the whole operation. The number they offered made me nauseous. I couldn't eat for 2 days. My co-founders and I had meetings with lawyers, went back and forth on terms, and finally signed everything last week. The press release was scheduled to go out Monday morning. I hadn't told my family any of it. They wouldn't have cared anyway. Dad had always made it clear that my brother was the reliable one. The one who chose a stable career path, who played by the rules, who made sense to him. I was the kid who spent too much time on computers, who talked about algorithms and APIs like they mattered, who couldn't explain what I did in a way that impressed people at barbecues. When I told Dad I was starting a company, he laughed and said I should focus on getting my degree first. When I told Mom we'd secured funding, she asked if that meant I was dropping out and seemed disappointed when I said no. My brother came over with a beer in his hand and asked if I was feeling all right. I told him I was great, just tired from the ceremony. He said graduation was a big deal and he was proud of me, but his eyes were already drifting back to the group gathered around the grill. He mentioned that his promotion came with a company car and stock options. I nodded and said that sounded good. He patted my shoulder and walked away. The lunch dragged on for another hour. Mom brought out a cake she'd ordered, and I noticed it had both our names on it. But my brother's was written larger, with congratulations on senior manager, piped in blue icing underneath. My name just sat there in the corner with graduate next to it, like an afterthought. We cut the cake. People took photos. Dad made a speech about hard work and family values and the importance of building a solid career. He looked at my brother the entire time. I drove home with my girlfriend in silence. She asked if I was okay, and I told her I would be. She knew about the acquisition, but didn't push the subject. When I got back to my apartment, I pulled up the press release draft on my laptop and read it for the 100th time. The number was right there in the second paragraph. The company name I'd built was about to be attached to a major industry player. My face would be in tech blogs by Tuesday. I thought about sending it to my family early, giving them a heads up before it went public. Then I remembered my mother's face when she was photographing my brother, the way my father's voice had swelled with pride during his speech, the cake with my name shoved into the corner. I closed the laptop and went to bed. Monday morning arrived. The press release went live at 9 a.m. I was in a coffee shop when my phone started buzzing. Messages from former classmates, people I'd networked with, a few journalists asking for comments. My co-founder sent me a screenshot of the announcement trending on a tech news site. I felt nothing, just a dull sense of satisfaction, like scratching an itch that had been bothering me for years. My family didn't call that day. Not a single message. I checked my phone compulsively, wondering if they'd seen it, if anyone had sent them the link, if they even followed tech news. By evening, I realized they probably had no idea. They existed in a different world, one where promotions at accounting firms mattered and startups were things kids wasted time on before getting real jobs. Tuesday morning, my phone rang. It was my brother. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. He asked if I'd seen the news about some company acquisition in the tech sector. I told him I had. He said someone at his office had mentioned it, said the founder had the same last name as us, same first name too. Was that me? I confirmed it was. There was a long pause. He asked if the numbers in the article were accurate. I told him they were. Another pause. He said he'd had no idea I was working on something that big, that serious. I told him I'd mentioned it a few times over the years. He didn't respond to that. He said we should get coffee sometime and talk about it. I told him I'd check my schedule and hung up. An hour later, Mom called. Her voice was different, higher pitched, almost frantic. She asked why I hadn't told them about the sale, about the company, about any of it. I reminded her that I had told them, multiple times, but they'd never seemed interested in the details. She insisted that wasn't true, that she'd always supported my interests, that I was being unfair. I stayed quiet. She switched tactics and said the family was so proud of me, that Dad was showing the article to everyone at his office. I asked her if she was proud on Saturday when she was taking photos of my brother. She said that was different, that was a family celebration, that I was being petty. I told her I had to go and ended the call. Dad called that evening. He didn't apologize or acknowledge Saturday. He just launched into questions about the acquisition, about what I was planning to do next, about whether I'd be investing the money or starting another company. I answered in short sentences, giving him nothing substantial. He told me he'd always known I had potential, that he'd seen something special in me from the start. I reminded him that he'd laughed when I told him about the company. He said I was misremembering, that he'd been supportive the whole time. I told him I had to go. Wednesday brought more calls. My aunt, the one who'd asked me how school felt before immediately turning to my brother, wanted to know if I was accepting investment advice. A cousin I hadn't spoken to in 5 years suddenly remembered we'd been close and wanted to catch up. My brother called again, this time suggesting we all get together for dinner, a real celebration, something proper. I told him I was busy for the next few weeks. He said it was important, that family should stick together during big moments. I asked him where that energy was on Saturday. He got defensive and said I was holding a grudge over nothing, that his promotion had been a big deal too, that I was being selfish for not sharing my news earlier. I hung up. Mom texted me asking for a meeting. She said they wanted to take me out for a proper celebration, just family, no distractions. She sent 3 more messages when I didn't respond immediately, each one more insistent than the last. Dad followed up with his own text saying we needed to talk about my future, about financial planning, about opportunities. I left them all on read. Thursday morning, I woke up to a missed call from my brother and a voicemail. His tone had shifted from casual interest to something resembling desperation. He said the family was concerned about me, that I was isolating myself, that they just wanted to be part of my success. He mentioned that Dad had some connections in the investment world, that Mom had been talking to her friends about my accomplishment, that everyone was excited for me. He asked me to please call back, to let them in, to stop being cold. I deleted the voicemail and made breakfast. My girlfriend asked if I was planning to talk to them eventually. I told her I didn't know. She said holding on to anger would only hurt me in the long run, that family was complicated but important. I told her they'd had years to be important and had chosen my brother every single time. She didn't argue. Friday afternoon, Mom called again. This time she was crying. She said she didn't understand why I was shutting them out, that she'd always loved me, that she was sorry if I felt overlooked on Saturday, but it hadn't been intentional. I asked her about the cake, about the size of the names, about the speech Dad gave that was entirely about my brother. She said I was reading too much into things, that I was being unfair, that she couldn't believe I was punishing them over something so small. I told her it wasn't small to me. She asked what I wanted from them, what would make this right. I told her I didn't want anything anymore. She started crying harder and the call disconnected. Dad sent me an email that evening. It was long, formal, the kind of message he'd write to a business associate. He outlined all the ways they'd supported me growing up, all the sacrifices they'd made, all the opportunities they'd provided. He said he was disappointed in my behavior, that I was acting entitled and immature, that success didn't give me the right to disrespect my family. He said they wanted to meet with me to discuss things like adults, that this silent treatment was beneath me. He ended by saying he expected a response within 24 hours. I didn't respond. Update 1. Saturday morning, exactly 1 week after my graduation, my brother showed up at my apartment. I didn't let him in. We talked through the doorway. He said the family was falling apart, that mom had been crying all week, that dad was furious and hurt. I asked him why he cared now. He said he'd always cared, that I was his brother, that we were family. I asked him what he remembered about my graduation day. He hesitated and then said he remembered it being nice, that everyone had been happy. I asked him if he remembered the toast. He said, of course, it was a celebration. I asked him what they'd toasted to. He went quiet. I closed the door. Mom sent me a text an hour later saying my brother had told her about our conversation, that she was begging me to reconsider, that she couldn't stand this distance between us. She said they'd made a mistake not making my graduation more special, but that didn't mean I should cut them off forever. She asked if money would help, if they could contribute to something, if there was any way to fix this. I stared at the message for a long time and then blocked her number. Dad called from Mom's phone. I answered because I didn't recognize it. He told me I was acting like a child, that I needed to grow up and move past whatever perceived slight I was holding on to. He said he'd built a good life for our family, that I'd benefited from his hard work, that I owed them basic respect at minimum. I asked him if he'd read the press release. He said of course he had, multiple times. I asked him what my company did. He stumbled through an answer that was completely wrong. I asked him if he'd ever asked me about my work before the acquisition. He said he'd always been interested, but I'd been secretive about it. I asked him to name one conversation we'd had about my startup before Monday. He couldn't. I told him that was the problem and hung up. My aunt called me later that day. She said the family was worried about me, that this wasn't healthy, that I needed to forgive and move forward. I asked her if she remembered talking to me at the graduation party. She said she did, that she'd asked about school. I asked her what else she remembered about our conversation. She said we'd talked for a while, that it had been nice catching up. I asked her what my major was. She guessed business. I told her it was computer science and that I'd told her that day, right before she'd walked away to ask my brother about his salary. She got quiet and then said she had to go. Update 2. 3 weeks passed. The calls and messages stopped. I assumed they'd given up, moved on, written me off as ungrateful and difficult. My life continued without them. I met with lawyers about tax implications, talked to financial advisors about investments, started sketching ideas for my next project. My girlfriend suggested therapy to process everything. I told her I'd think about it. Then my brother sent me a letter, an actual physical letter, delivered to my apartment. I almost threw it away but ended up opening it late one night when I couldn't sleep. It was 5 pages long, handwritten, rambling. He apologized for Saturday, for not making my graduation special, for not paying attention to my work over the years. He said he'd been so focused on his own career that he'd failed to see what I was building. He admitted that the family had always treated him as the golden child and that it wasn't fair to me. He said he wanted to fix things but didn't know how, that he missed me, that he was sorry. I read it twice and then put it in a drawer. Part of me wanted to respond, to acknowledge the apology, to maybe start rebuilding something. But every time I thought about picking up the phone, I remembered standing in that backyard, watching them toast to his promotion while my diploma collected dust on a table. I remembered the cake with his name written large and mine shoved in the corner. I remembered Dad's speech that never mentioned me once. The anger hadn't faded. If anything, it had settled into something colder and more permanent. A month after the acquisition, my former co-founder invited me to a tech conference. I went, mostly to get out of my apartment. I gave a talk about our development process and the challenges we'd faced. Afterward, people wanted to network, exchange contact information, talk about future opportunities. I felt seen in a way my family had never made me feel. These people understood what I'd built, appreciated the technical complexity, respected the achievement. I realized I'd been seeking validation from people who were never going to provide it. That night, I unblocked my mom's number and sent her a single message. I told her I wasn't interested in meeting or talking, but I wanted her to know that I was okay, that I was moving forward with my life, and that they should do the same. She responded immediately, asking if we could please just have one conversation. I didn't reply. My girlfriend and I broke up 2 months later. She said I'd become cold, that I was holding on to bitterness in a way that was changing me. She said she understood why I was angry, but that I needed to either work through it or let it go. That living in this frozen state of resentment wasn't healthy. I told her she was probably right, but I wasn't ready to change yet. We hugged goodbye, and she asked me to take care of myself. I said I would. I saw my brother at a coffee shop 3 months after the acquisition. It was accidental. Neither of us had planned it. He was sitting by the window with his laptop, probably working on a weekend like he always did. I could have left before he saw me, but something made me walk over. He looked up, and his face did something complicated, relief mixed with anxiety. He asked if I wanted to sit down. I told him I only had a minute, but I'd stand. He asked how I was doing. I said fine. He asked if I'd gotten his letter. I said I had. He asked if there was any chance we could talk, really talk, about everything. I told him maybe someday, but not yet. He nodded and said he'd wait as long as it took. I told him not to hold his breath and left. Update 3. 6 months after my graduation, I started a new company. Different focus, same drive. I brought on a new team, people I'd met through the conference circuit, people who understood the work without needing it explained in simple terms. We raised a seed round within 2 months. I threw myself into it completely, working 16-hour days, sleeping in the office, building something bigger than the last project. My dad sent me a message on LinkedIn. He said he'd seen the news about my new venture, that he was impressed with my persistence, that he'd like to grab coffee and hear about my plans. I left it unread. Mom tried to connect with me through mutual friends, asking them to pass along messages about family gatherings and holidays. I politely declined every invitation. My brother stopped trying to contact me directly, but I'd occasionally see him liking old photos of us on social media, a strange digital form of reaching out that required no response. The revenge I'd imagined, the moment where they'd realize what they'd lost and come crawling back, had already happened. They'd called and begged and apologized, and I'd given them nothing. But it didn't feel the way I thought it would. There was no satisfaction, no sense of victory. Just emptiness where a family used to be. My therapist, the one my ex-girlfriend had suggested and I'd finally started seeing, asked me what I wanted the endgame to be. I told her I didn't know. She asked if punishing them forever was really what I needed. I told her they deserved it. She asked if that was the same as it making me happy. I didn't have an answer. A year after my graduation, I got an email from my mother. No begging, no guilt-tripping, just a simple message. She said she'd been doing a lot of thinking, that she'd talked to a counselor about family dynamics and favoritism, that she'd come to understand the ways they'd failed me over the years. She said she didn't expect forgiveness and wouldn't ask for it, but she wanted me to know that she saw it now, really saw it, and she was sorry. She said if I ever wanted to talk, she'd be there, and if I didn't, she'd respect that too. She ended by saying she loved me and was proud of me, and that she should have said that more often when it mattered. I read the email a dozen times over the next week. I drafted responses and deleted them. I showed it to my therapist, who asked what I felt when I read it. I told her I felt tired. She asked if I wanted to keep carrying this anger. I told her I didn't know how to put it down. She said that was okay, that healing wasn't linear, that I'd figure it out when I was ready. I never responded to the email, but I stopped blocking their numbers. I let the messages come through, read them occasionally, never replied. My company grew. I hired 20 people, then 50, then 100. I gave talks at universities and tech conferences. I made more money than I knew what to do with. I dated people who didn't know my family history and didn't ask too many questions. I built a life that was successful by every external measure and empty in ways I didn't like to examine. On the 2nd anniversary of my graduation, I drove past my parents' house. I didn't stop or call ahead, just drove slowly down their street and looked at the familiar windows and the yard where I'd stood watching everyone celebrate my brother. The anger that had burned so hot 2 years ago had cooled into something else, something I didn't have a name for. Not forgiveness, but maybe the beginning of letting go. I didn't know if I'd ever talk to them again. Maybe someday I'd be ready to hear their apologies and accept them, to rebuild something new from the wreckage of what we'd had. Or maybe this distance would become permanent, a clean break that let me move forward without the weight of their expectations and disappointments. Either way, I'd proven what I needed to prove. They knew what I'd built, what I'd accomplished, what they'd missed while celebrating someone else. Whether that mattered anymore was a question I was still trying to answer. If you'd like to see more stories like this, a gentle tap on the subscribe button would mean the world to us.